Hello and welcome back to Kilmainham Jail for another one of our Kilmainham Jail on lockdown videos. We're going to continue looking at the story of the 1916 Rising through objects in the collection of Kilmainham Jail Museum. And today we're concentrating in particular on the event that became known as the North King Street Massacre, which occurred between the evening of the 28th of April 1916 and the early hours of the morning of the 29th. And for those of you who are not too familiar with Dublin geography, we have a map over here showing Dublin during the 1916 Rising. And if we head over the north side onto what was then Sackville Street, now O'Connell Street, you can see the GPO, the headquarters of the rebels. We also have Liberty Hall. And then as we move over here, you have the Four Courts, and then just up above it, North King Street. So the Four Courts, another rebel outpost. And as you can see, North King Street was very much in the heart of the fighting, and there was some intense fighting there during Easter week. It's not really reflected in this map, but that area is really a kind of a warren of streets and laneways. And at that time, most of the buildings there would have been tenement houses, which would have been occupied by large numbers of poor and working class people. And the British Army actually suffered quite a lot of casualties in that particular area because the rebels were able to position themselves in buildings and acted almost as snipers. And as the week wore on, the British Army grew suspicious of the local population. They decided that the reason these people were staying in their homes was that they were sympathetic to the rebels. The truth was, of course, that these were poor and working class people, and they literally had nowhere else to go. And the best they could do was try and stay safe in their own homes. And then on the 28th of April, in the evening of the 28th, orders were given to the South Staffordshire Regiment to go into this area and clear it of rebels. Fatally, they were also told to take no prisoners, which had absolutely catastrophic consequences for the civilian population around North King Street, because they started going from door to door in the area, taking men away and shooting them dead. Among the men that they shot was George Ennis. This is a memorial card to George Ennis produced by his family. He lived in a tenement house, 174 North King Street. He was taken away and shot, as was another tenant in the house, a man called Michael Noonan. But the thing I really want to look at is another object that was kept by the Ennis family. And these are fragments of a bullet that was fired by the British Army by a soldier into the drawer of a dresser in their home. And they've gouged out these fragments and they placed them in this box for safekeeping. You can see it's an old gramophone needle box. You can see the very famous logo of HMV, the famous His Master's Voice. And the reason they did this and the reason they kept these fragments was very soon after this massacre had taken place. The British Army realised how serious it was, and they began, I suppose, what we'd now call a cover-up, and bodies were taken and buried hastily. Evidence was removed and destroyed. So you can see here that the family not only dug out these fragments, but they also recorded that they came from a cutlery drawer in their home. And they are also, again, they're not mincing their words, they're saying that George Ennis was murdered by a British soldier on the 29th of April 1916. So a really kind of fascinating object. Now there was an official inquiry into what occurred in North King Street, but the results of that inquiry were never made public. In fact, they were only released in 2001. And in many ways, I suppose this object is also evidence of something we saw in the case of Sarah and Christina Caffrey in one of the earlier videos, that the people who are most vulnerable, and certainly the people who suffer the most in terms of casualties, were the civilians of Dublin, particularly the poor and working class people who had nowhere else to go. So that's it for another one of our Kilmainham Jail on Lockdown videos. Hopefully you'll tune in for our next offering. In the meantime, stay safe.